I'd like to split this talk into two different phrases. The first is sort of a geeky one. I spend a lot of my life within the Bluetooth community writing Bluetooth standards. So if you don't like Bluetooth, throw something at me. The past few years, I've been spending time working in the health working group and also in the new Bluetooth low energy profile. It's a new energy standard. It's a new Bluetooth standard I think is going to be vastly important for making cheap consumer devices that send data that just connect up to web services. So that's one of the enabling things that will help mHealth move forward. The next important one is it's not just about devices talking to the web and giving data out. It's about how do we provide compelling services that make people want to use them. So the second half, I'd like to talk at perhaps some of the slightly more outrageous, but equally some of the earlier business models that we might see coming to market. mHealth isn't new. It's been around. We've been talking about it for 5 to 10 years. There are no really big companies that have emerged in mHealth so far. We've got a lot of little companies that are dabbling, but we're still at the noise level. And there's a number of reasons for that. So I'd like to tell you some of the home truths I've learned over that. First of all, though, Bluetooth Low Energy, it's a completely new Bluetooth standard. We've had the chance to sort of go back to a clean sheet of paper and design something that can be really low power, really easy to use. So it's a new radio, it's a new protocol stack. It's cleverly been designed so that it can work inside an existing Bluetooth chip, or rather a new Bluetooth chip. But it's a very cheap, very low power radio. And we've done three things with it. We've tried to make it really low power so you can make stuff that runs off batteries for years. We've made it very small, very efficient in order to do that. And we tried to make it so that it's very easy to design products that connect up to the internet. And that's what it's all about. It's about products that you buy, and the part of that product's existence is it has to talk to a web application. So we've thrown away all the difficult bits. We've got rid of application profiles. If you've ever dealt with Bluetooth, you'll be really happy about that. We've thrown away high data rates. This is for slow stuff. It's little bits of information. It's not streaming. It's nothing going fast. It's not even file transfer. It's how can you just say the basic bits and pieces you need. And then we've also chucked away some of the qualification costs so you can do it cheaply, and we've tried to make it really easy to use. So, what's it for? It's for all sorts of devices that just have something to say. And the idea is going to be, how do you connect these devices either to each other or up to the web? So it's things like the thermostats around the house, and all they do is tell you what the temperature is, or when you need to turn the boiler on or turn it off. Things as stupid as you can put it cheaply into office equipment, just to say, I've run out of staples. It's going to cost you less than $1 to put this into products, to wirelessly enable them. The health devices that we're talking about here, how far have I been running? As soon as I finish the run, go and tell my Facebook site how many steps I've done. If it's your auntie, tell her that the pill's been taken, putting it into medication dispensers, putting it into alarms, home alarms, burglar alarms, your house has just burnt down, you want to know that on your mobile phone. And that's a real product. Most of these are products you can already buy that have wireless of some form in it. The heart rate monitor. It can very easily, because it's battery powered, almost go into disposable devices. So you can start to look at things that get sewn into clothing, last through a year or two's worth of washing, and then you start again. And the interesting thing is, what as an industry we're going to do? How do we make it? Well, it's going to go into devices like this, and as I've said, we'll put it into something like this. It will cost you $1 or so to do, and it gives that connectivity. But the other thing we tried to do with it is we actually sat down, unusually for any standard, and said, let's think about how we're going to make these products. How am I going to make that, and how am I going to make it so it's easy for it to connect? Well, we've got these devices. They're going to enable mHealth. If they're going to enable mHealth, they've got to make it easy to get data from you, from me, from whatever we're doing, up onto a website. So the first thing you do, you take one of those devices, and when you ship it, the clever thing is you can pre-program in an IP address or a web address that that device wants to connect to. So every device can have a set of services it can talk to, already programmed in. I then go, I buy my phone, we've got lots of nice things in here that makes it nice and easy for it to connect to the phone. It can sense how far away it is, so if you've got two devices, you bring them together and they know. And once that talks to the phone, we've put the ability for manufacturers to write a generic gateway program. Now, that generic gateway program will get shipped with your phone. It's not a special application. It's generic. It works with any low-energy device. And it talks to the device and said, what's that web address or IP address you want to talk to? And as soon as it sees that, it says, right, these are the ones your device can talk to. Which ones of these do you want to connect to? Works that out, makes a secure tunnel up to the internet and a website, and then it connects your device up to that website, and the phone actually fades out of the picture. From then on, every time I go running and I come back and it finds my phone nearby, it tells that web application how many steps I've run. If I stand on the scales, when I stand on it, it sends that information back up to my Weight Watcher site or whatever it is. We've tried to design it to make it really easy to make a product that takes your data and puts it into a website somewhere. That's always been difficult. There are companies, and we'll hear things like patients like me later on, millions of people today will go and measure what they're doing, carefully go and type it in. It takes away that difficulty. Once you've got it in a product, all of a sudden, data should get there. That's the aim of what we're doing. It also means you can start to think about how do you design devices, because they don't need to look like this. We've seen the clever sensors. We need to start thinking, how do we make those clever to use? So if something can be touched, can we build a sensor into that so as you use it, and this is particularly valid for some of the assisted living and the elderly ones, of just using everyday devices that will transfer your medical data or the way you're living up to a website. And we can make it easy. Why can't an everyday device just do that measurement for us? It's quite an interesting one because it's one that the medical industry doesn't understand. The medical industry is very good at making very expensive equipment that's nice and white and shiny and has flashing lights and goes ping. And if you put that in the home environment and you walk in, you immediately know that person's ill. If we want people to use these things, we've got to make them be friendly. Right, that's a technology bit. From now on, I just want to talk about some of the barriers, the business models, and the things you need to think about if you want to enter this market of mobile health. Well, the first one of the truths is we keep on being told this will save all of our finances, that it's going to be cheaper. In the short term, it won't. The reality is mHealth is actually going to be more expensive. Sounds strange, but one of the reasons that's going to happen is the only way we actually cut the cost of healthcare is to sack half of the medical staff, because most of our healthcare costs are actually on salaries of doctors and nurses. We're only going to do that in the long term if we change people's behavior. Because this isn't likely to be taken up by the health services in the short term, people are going to buy it. So overall, more money will be spent. So don't think it'll save costs. And don't think that doctors want it. Doctors have spent 200 years setting themselves up to be gods, and they see mobile health and patient-run medicine as taking that power away. It's a sad thing, but last year, medical professions and societies around the world spent tens of millions of dollars lobbying against healthcare. They will lobby for more regulation to stop wireless healthcare and mobile healthcare coming in. And the other thing we tend to forget, we say, this is wonderful. We've seen all the pictures. You can run with these. You can wear 5 million sensors on you, and it'll all go somewhere. But the reality is that it's not just doctors that don't want it, but most patients don't either. Now, that's one of the counterintuitive ones, because everybody says patients must want it. Everybody wants to get well. Just to make a point on this, here's a picture you've probably seen before. The fact you're laughing is a statement of the fact that you know full well people don't actually do what they know is good for them. Most people, given the opportunity to go out and change their behavior, don't. They carry on doing things the way they always had. And that's, again, one of the things we need to do. We need to work out how to make compelling services if people are going to go out there and change that behavior. And only once we've done that and changed it for a large proportion of society will we see mHealth get integrated back into healthcare and costs come down. We've got the process things, we've got to remind people to come to see the doctor, but we haven't actually got the behavioral changing aspects. So, business models, we're all out there, we're sniffing around trying to see what is it that's going to make us money in healthcare? How are we going to do it? Well, again, a few very basic ones. mHealth is not about curing disease. There are some very clever, very dedicated people doing it, but in terms of a business, it's too difficult. We're not going to do that. It's actually about finding out what around your health will people pay for. And it's some basics, you might say they're cynical ones, but it's maintaining quality of life. It's things like enhancing your self-image. It's a whole spectrum, mHealth. It's almost from the beauty at one end through wellness up to long-term chronic condition at another. And don't forget it's that wide spectrum. So if you can gauge people at an early point, you can actually keep them throughout their lives. And it's also about assuaging guilt. So once we've got that compelling service, hopefully you can get somebody out there to pay. Let's look at 4 quick business areas that might be there. The first I've called it's the open source one. It's the wisdom of crowds. It's a fascinating one that as we grow older, we give up doing the things like collecting stamps or train sets or Barbie dolls, and we collect long-term chronic conditions like asthma, like diabetes, and all of those. And we have to live with them. We're not going to get cured, but by managing how we live our lives, we can help to improve the quality of life with that disease. And the people that know most about how to do that are the people that actually have the disease. They have it and have to live with it 24 hours a day. Their doctors don't. And it's going to be interesting if we can start to get data back from these devices and aggregate it, and people can start to mine that, whether that will start to produce medical information that we haven't got. Because medicine today is not very evidence-based. Medicine today tends to be based on what your senior partner or your lecturer told you to do. And one thing mHealth could do is give us a body of data greater than we've ever had before. So the open source community, and there's lots of programmers who are reaching the age where they have a vested interest because they've either got these diseases or their children have, who may actually go out and do something about it. There's the guilty. I'm too fat. I know I'm not doing this. People who need to change the behavior. Weight Watchers is probably the most successful personal health scheme out there today. And if we can start to automate other ones, we may find lots of others. The other one for guilt is the assisted living. It's a good idea to keep people living in their own home. And the guilt aspect here comes in. We're already seeing business models where people are buying their parents' assisted living devices simply because they don't want them living at home with them. So they're guilty and they spend the money to keep them living in their own homes. It happens. What I think is the most interesting one, and nobody's touching on, is the whole aspect of alternative medicine. Why shouldn't mobile health include mobile homeopathy and everything else? It's an industry that I think of as really sort of the healthcare equivalent of the pornography industry. It's not regulated, it's giving people what they want, but they might at the end of the day not be quite sure they got what they wanted. And nobody's going to follow up if you get it wrong. It could, like the porn industry, really drive technology. Most of what we have on the internet today was driven by technical developments in the porn industry. So probably, you're a capital city that's got a lot of its reputation from that. It's a good place to... And of course, the other thing you're very good for is the drug dealing. A question for all of you. What sort of containers do you think you would need to hold 15 million of those pills? The answer is actually this audience. The average person through their life consumes about 50,000 pills today. Some parts of the US, that's up to 200,000. This audience, between us, will consume about 15 million pills. And an interesting market is to look at if we can start to measure, not our vital signs, but just our day-to-day basics, whether that information could be used to change what we take. And there's almost a business model for either the health food industry or the generic pill manufacturers to say, let's get rid of the medical profession, let's just deal direct. So there's lots of interesting things that can be done that are a little bit different from the medical ones, but may get us there faster. There are barriers. The medical profession won't like any of this. The medical profession sees this as taking away their livelihoods. We have an awful lot of people who have been told by their parents, go into medicine, you'll pay your mortgage and you'll get a pension. They don't like the prospect that that might not be. There's lots of barriers in regulation, but the biggest barrier is actually going to be the imagination of people out there. Once you've got this, how can you make something that's interesting and compelling so when I buy a device, it doesn't just get put on the shelf? And I think the way to get that to work is to stop looking at mHealth thinking we're doctors and start thinking like patients. There are going to be some fascinating models out there. They're going to be very disruptive, and they're going to mean that we need to go and start to look in different places. So keep on looking.
Yep. Thank you very much, Nick. Maybe one question from the audience, as we're running late on schedule due to me. Sorry.
Dead on time.
Yeah, you were perfectly on time, just I wasn't. One question from the audience.
When do you expect this Bluetooth low energy profile to be in devices?
Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have said profile. It's a new standard. The standard was released on just before Christmas, on December the 16th. We're seeing the first chips starting to come out. I think we'll see the chips available around the middle of this year. They should be in phones probably just after this Christmas. So next year I expect to see something like 50 to 100 million phones shipping with these in, and a whole range of devices out there trying to connect to them. Not trying, they will connect. They'll work. I'm a technology optimist.
Thank you again, Nick.
Thanks.